Coming up this week on Success Won't Come Calling.
Don't care how hard you are, how big you are, who you think you can fight. I've been shot, I've been stabbed, I've had my ear bit off. I've spent years in solitary confinement. I've fought prison officers, I've fought inmates. You put me in that little room on my own, like there's no one there but me, and I'm left with how I feel, and I've got to like communicate with me and be real and not put this mask on and pretend. When I got to that stage in my life that I thought, you know what, there's no escaping all that. Just own the fact that you're hurting, that you're upset. Don't be ashamed of telling anyone that you're scared. You know, it's okay not to be okay.
Hello friends, welcome to the show. It's SWCC. Simon Gibson here, reporting for duty, and I'm here with my guest this week, who's Billy Moore. Billy, how are you, sir?
I'm brilliant. Thanks for asking me to come on, Simon.
Oh, listen, the pleasure is all ours. Really appreciate you doing this, man. So I've got to get through your story in an hour or so. I'm not quite sure I'm going to achieve that, but You've written 2 best-selling books. I've just finished the most recent of them, which is called Fighting for My Life. I'll come to that in a minute because it's a brilliant book. You've also got your podcast, which is going fantastically well. You've got such an interesting story to tell. You've been an English teacher in Thailand. We're going to get to all these things. But first of all, we've got to start with the fact that you have been Sylvester Stallone's stunt double. That is true, isn't it?
Stunt stands in. It's not about as trouble, but yeah.
So tell me how that happened.
That was it was quite like odd how that happened really. I was in the gym, I was fighting in Thailand, Chiang Mai, boxing, competing in Muay Thai competitions, and I was training in this gym called the Royal Orchid, and upstairs there was a few Westerners training in there, and one of them looked familiar, and I thought he was on the poster for this fight coming up at the weekend, so I approached him and I said, look, you know, are you fighting at the weekend? And he went, no. He said, I said, you look familiar. He said, oh, you might recognise me from Coronation Street. I went, what? I didn't watch it. Like, his name was Matt Marsden, lovely fella. So I said, okay, Matt. I said, what are you doing over here? He said, we're making a movie, Rambo. I said, oh, yeah, brilliant. Favourite, Stallone. Grew up on the Rocky movies. That was, that franchise kind of like encouraged me to box as a kid. But yeah, someone came in a couple of days later, casting directors looking for people who were interested in getting involved. I gave them my name, my number, and then I got a call a couple of weeks later saying it was an American, like it was like a Thai American bird called Stacy. She went, hey, yeah, Stacy was her name. Hey Billy, and she then the book, isn't she? Yeah. Hey Billy, would you like to come and get involved and be Stallone stunt standing? I was like, oh fuck off, who's this? Blagging me here. Stop it, will you? But it was true. So I went along to this hotel, 5 a.m, where there was a pickup point, and we went on set and met him. Brilliant. I enjoyed it. You know,
was he a nice bloke?
Do you know what? I felt quite intimidated because everyone seemed to be like feeling. It was like he had a presence. Obviously, it was a massive presence, and everyone was running around, and I was like, this young kid, full of beans at the time, loads of energy, and just started having a little chat with him, and he couldn't understand the words I was saying, like, but yeah, yo, what's this guy saying, man? We need to get some subtitles, man. Kevin, get some subtitles. What's he saying, man? But I think that's what attracted them.
Yeah,
to me, really.
Well, I mean, we're going to get to how you came to be in Thailand shortly. But as I say, the book. Oh, one thing I should mention: we drink what the guest wants on the podcast, and for reasons we'll come to later. We're on the hard stuff today. We're just on the H2O. So, yep. But it's still nice to have a drink with you, and thanks for your company again, mate.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So the book, as I mentioned, is called Fighting for My Life, the most recent book, that is.
Yeah.
I found it interesting because I'd read A Prayer Before Dawn some years ago. And because the most recent book sort of goes back from that to your early experiences and growing up in Liverpool, and sort of I found that the new book was sort of helping us understand what had contributed to your experiences later in life. I found it such an interesting transition for me as a reader to sort of go back in time rather than pick up where we left off in the first book, if you see what I mean. I want to come to the writing process a bit later on. But let's start with sort of the subject matter of the new book, which is you growing up, is your experiences earlier on in your life. So you grew up in Wavertree, was it?
Speak.
Right.
Yeah. Then we moved to Wavertree at the age of, when I was in my late teens. That's when things started to change.
Got you.
Yeah.
And what's your recollections of growing up in Speak then?
It was quite. I felt quite lonely and lost. Didn't feel I had any friends. People were knocking at the door for me, brothers and sisters, and I was always like confused why I was. I didn't feel as if I could fit in with anyone. It was quite like peculiar, the feelings I had. And now I put that down to like I had low self-esteem, and I was suffering like with lack of confidence because my dad at the time was quite volatile and violent, and I had a lot of fear around him. So that probably projected, I probably projected that onto a lot of like my own kind of like ways of being in the community, really not fitting in. So yeah, that was so. And no one had ever passed me the ball in school when we were playing football, or I'd never get picked, and so I always felt like I was separated from everyone. It's like, and I share this often. It's like it's like walking past my own house and looking through the window and seeing a family and not feeling like I even belonged there. It was just the oddest feeling ever growing up. It was like, and I always look back on it and think, what the fuck was wrong with me?
Well, it is because you're from a big family, aren't you?
I was the oldest, yeah.
And how many of you?
There was 6 of us. I mean, Mum had like the 6 of us within 8 years. So there was like a lot of kids at the time.
And what did your mum do? Was your mum working?
My mum was she was a barmaid, and she worked every hour, every job that she could get. Really, my dad didn't work at all, from what I remember. He just sat at home. So that was like nothing you wanted to aspire to. But there was no role model in that area. He told me he was a boxer. He had boxing magazines, and never seen him go to the gym. But he always wanted to impress him and get him to kind of acknowledge me, if you know what I mean, in that area. But yeah, it was, she done her best, really.
And because you joined a boxing club, didn't you, around that time?
I did. It was called St. Ambrose ABC. I joined karate first. I remember Bruce Lee Entered the Dragon on the telly, and I loved it. And I wasn't really good at karate. Got the suit and everything. I don't even remember even if I got the shoes. I think I just went in a pair of trackies. I had a cousin who excelled in it, and I was quite jealous because he was getting he went from white belt to yellow belt to tan. He started getting all these belts. I couldn't get past the first one. And there was a boxing club attached to the karate club, and I went there instead. And he said, put your hands up, and that's all I ever knew, to defend myself, really.
And did your dad, you mentioned you wanted him to acknowledge you because he was a boxer himself. Did you get that acknowledgement?
I did, yeah. He started to take a little bit of notice, come to a few fights. And that kind of made me feel a little bit worthy, and wanted. And it was, it kind of wore off pretty quick, though. Because it kind of over the years, he'd missed out on a lot. By the time I started to gain self-esteem and confidence in boxing myself, a little bit of discipline. And he wasn't really that important in my life then. You with me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I kind of just thought, yeah, you're a bit too late coming forward with the goods there, Dad, know what I mean?
And obviously, when we come to a bit later in your life, we know that you hit some troubles in terms of in terms of prison and that sort of thing. When did you first start getting involved in things which could get you into trouble?
Like we were talking about before, I think I felt like a scruff because we never had nothing. We had nothing. Growing up, we had no clothes that we could sort of wear and look smart in. My mum, they were all hand-me-downs, and she'd go to the Oxfam and we'd get second-hand clobber, and I felt like a tramp. In fact, I was called a tramp at school, right? So that label was put on me. You're a scruff, you're a tramp, you haven't got this, you haven't got the Ben Sherman, you haven't got the Farah pants. So I didn't feel, it was fucking horrible. Kids are cruel, especially at a young age, and you absorb all those labels from an early age. So I didn't feel good about myself. Didn't feel like I could ever meet a girl and have a relationship. And it was just horrible fucking growing up. It was really, really uncomfortable. So started going off the rail when I found out I could make a little bit of money here and there, and then buy myself a nice pair of trainees and, you know, feel like I fitted in. But no matter what I put on myself, I still didn't feel like worthy of it. It was weird. You know, you could dress me in the best clobber, and underneath I felt like dirty, and like that label was still attached.
I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, there's something about Liverpool there, isn't it? Because we were talking about this beforehand, weren't we? Even now, you see kids walking around in 500 quid t-shirts and that sort of thing. And Liverpool's always been a bit of a sort of quite into its fashion and probably a little bit spending above its means sometimes.
Oh yeah, we've got a city full of, like, growing up, it was Lacoste wearing it early for me. Lacoste, it was like all Wade Smith, Fred Perry, you know, your Adidas trim tabs going further. You know, it was like it's going far back as Reebok Classic and Reebok Royal and everything you could think of in that area. We never had it, and, you know, we were really grateful back then to actually get anything.
And did you, when you left school, did you work, or was that when you kind of kept getting into more trouble?
I don't know. I tried to get a few jobs with KFC and apprentices in places, but no, didn't really work much.
And when you moved to Wavertree, you mentioned earlier that was when things started to sort of change. What happened then?
Well, I don't know if you remember this, Simon, right? There was something called the YTS scheme.
Yeah, I do.
Right, It was a youth training scheme. Like, these youngsters won't know it. It was a YTS. So I got put on this YTS course. It was £27.50 a week. And I was sent to this ship in Boston, Lincolnshire called the John Sue. I was training to be a cook or a chef or something. Didn't last long, really. Got nicked up there for the first time. Got arrested by the police.
That was the first time?
That was the first time I'd been arrested. They put me in a care home for a week.
And how old are you now?
I was 16
right
at the time. And my mum had left Speak whilst I was up there and moved to Wavertree. The funny thing was, when I got like bail and sent back to Liverpool, I went to the house in Speak, and when I knocked at the door, these are the people opened the door, and I said, "Sorry, we don't know who you are. Where's my mum?" She said, "We've moved in here last week, and, you know, they moved out." I said, "Well, where have they gone?" You can imagine the abandonment issues at that time. It was like, you're messing. Where's my ma? So the fella who was living in the house took me to, because it was a house swap. They done like a house swap and took me up to Chatsworth Estate in Wavertree. And I don't know, I was just, again, my dad, it was just like, you know, you'd come back from this potential job, apprenticeship, and you've been arrested and bringing police to the house and everything. It wasn't really good.
Sure.
You know, so I wasn't made to feel welcome.
And you mentioned sort of the first time that you were arrested. When was the first time you sort of were up in court and faced the possibility of going to prison?
Oh yeah, within months of being up in Wavertree, I think it was about 6 months. I think I met this girl. She was a heroin addict. She was only 17, 18 at the time. I think she was 2 years older than me. Like, heroin had hit Liverpool. It was an epidemic back in the 80s, late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of hit me. Didn't know what it was. Tried it. Became hooked on it pretty quick, and then needed to fund the habit that it developed. Started committing crime, and within months I was locked up in Hindley Young Offenders Institution at the age of 16.
And you obviously mentioned that at this point there was this abandonment issue, which anyone would feel in those circumstances. And you felt that you didn't fit in. Was there any element of you started taking drugs to a coping mechanism?
Oh yeah, massively. It was like, I remember trying to suppress all the pain and the sadness and the loss that I was feeling, and the rejection, massive rejection. You know, I'm not a victim. I was a volunteer to all this. I kind of put my hands up and take responsibility, and I was accountable for a lot of the stuff I did. But the contributing factors that led to that behaviour was like, I wasn't nurtured. I knew I wasn't nurtured. I wasn't showing any love or kindness or any guidance. My role model was a man who drank a lot of alcohol, battered me mum, smashed the house up,
and
screamed and shouted.
Did you witness a lot of that?
Oh yeah, this was regular. I was on the receiving end of getting beat up. I remember getting battered. Like, it was like every day, and I was like, what I didn't know. It's like, what have I done wrong? I used to go and sit in my room, like 6, 7 years old, going, what have I done wrong? What's up with me? I blame myself, not knowing that, like, he's got demons going on in his mind, and, he was, don't know what was going on for him at the time, but it's when I think about it, to lay your hands on a kid at that age, it's like, fucking hell, there's got to be something wrong with you.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, warning, Stacey's going to be crying for most of this, definitely.
but it's the reality. Like, when you're suffering a lot, and I was suffering in silence because there was no one to talk to. I remember trying to share it with someone, and they told me mum, and my mum told me dad, and then they found out, and so that the lack of trust, and trying to share how I was feeling didn't really kind of result in anything positive.
It must have increased as well, this issue of feeling left out, because if you also can't share with anyone, then you feel further marginalised, I guess.
Yeah.
And when you went for your first time in prison, was that in Walton, was it?
No, I was a young offenders. I was only 16,
of course,
going on to 17. So it was the colour of YPs or YOYs, a Young Offenders Institute. It was Hindley and Wigan. It was frightening. It was a frightening experience. It was just put in this shell. I was like, whoa, 23 hours a day. This is just took my life to a different level. Then I learned a lot whilst I was away as well. It's like it's like a school of, criminology.
Yeah,
basically.
And during the time in the young offenders home, were drugs available then as well?
Yeah, but it was mainly cannabis. It was never really the class A's, from what I remember. It was that comes later in like in Walton prison and stuff like that.
Because how old were you when you ended up in Walton?
Oh, you got to be 21 to end up in Walton. It's the cons, innit? So what it does, the transition from young offenders is from like the age of 16 up to 21, and then you're in the big house then. And
how do those experiences differ?
Well, it's a lot faster on the young offenders. They're a lot more like they're full of energy and a lot more violence, and then it's a bit more chilled than the cons, a bit more slower, laid back, relaxed.
And when you got to the stage, are you sort of in and out of these institutions in these years that we're talking about, sort of between 16 and your early 20s?
Yeah, I spent, I think it was over 19 years in 22 different prisons in the space of my lifetime. As it goes, I mean, it was a cycle that I couldn't break at the time. It was in and out, in and out. To be fair, I think it saved me life going to prison 90% of the time, because if I stayed out and continued to do what I was doing, I probably would have ended up dead. With the lifestyle, I don't think the drugs were killing me as much. It was the lifestyle that was killing me. The things that I was up to, the consequences of my behaviour and the way I was kind of reacting to situations all the time.
I mean, one of the things which is just so striking to me, and I think we're going to return to this, is that insight you've managed to gain into how you were living at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you must get called inspirational a lot. What I find most inspiring about you is that you don't shirk that accountability. You've got that insight, you've got that understanding of what was happening then.
Yeah.
And I don't think everyone would do that. I think some people would blame others. They would try and shirk that.
I think it's easy to justify your behaviour and blame your environment or the situation that you're in. I think for me, there was choices, but I wasn't aware of choices. There was no intervention. People weren't coming to me saying, there's a different way of living, there's this, that and the other. Our role models were our dads or our mothers, and monkey see, monkey do, And I always said to my ma, I'll never be like me dad, mum. I'll never be like him, drinking, smashing the house up, causing murder, scaring the kids. She went, no, son, you're a good boy. But I did exactly everything he did, but not with the drink, it was the drugs, So, yeah, shit like.
And you mentioned this issue of there was no intervention. And I must admit, when I was reading the most recent book, that thought occurred to me, because what's clear to me is that you're a very intelligent man. that you've got a whole range of skills and qualities that I'm sure have developed due to your experiences. However, the raw material will have been there at that age. And there's many, many kids in that situation. Reflecting upon the experiences you've had, the school system doesn't work in those scenarios. It sounds as if the punishment system doesn't work either. What can we do now, do you think, to help the Billy Moores of now?
So yeah, that's like when you just mentioned that, school for me was like, on reflection, was like I used to get the cane. I had the cane 4 times in one hit. Right, that's like, it was unusual. I got the like, this is like a kid who's 9 years old getting whacked with a stick across the hand. Right, 2 on that one and 2 on that one. For stealing a bag of soldiers off the market and speaking, my ma caught me and told the headmaster. I didn't expect to get battered like that, but I was getting that every day, you know, the cane. I remember, right, and I'll share this, right, because it's something we do as kids, don't we? And I've always felt a little bit embarrassed about it. But when I was about 6 or 7, I can't even remember, maybe a little bit younger, my mum had nail varnish. And I remember her leaving it out and I got it and I started painting my nails. You know, as a kid, as you just do things, don't you? And it wouldn't come off. And I had all that anxiety and panic about it. So I had my jumper covering my sleeves in school. And this is just a true story, this. And I remember one of the teachers saying to me, "Show me your hands," because I was writing some work out and they seen this nail varnish. You know what they did, right? This is a true story, this, right? They took me around to every classroom, stood me on a chair, right? Told me to put my hands out and humiliated me in every classroom. Look what he's done to his fingers. Right, you know, can you imagine that happening to a child today? You go, oh, look what he's done. Picked his mum nail varnish up. Oh, come here, let's get this off. You know, don't need to do the blah, blah, blah. But then, so you can imagine like the feelings like I'm going through. It was just like, all this stuff was like, it was just like, I just felt so isolated, you know? So I'm thinking today what schools are like. I don't know what it is like in these schools today. I think the kids are going in with phones. There's a lot of temptation. The teachers, from what I'm hearing from my stepdaughters, are a bit like subservient as well. They're not like, okay, get on with it. There's no way. It's not like it was back then. So I don't know what the outcome is.
But it's clearly failed you, and I know it will have failed others then and now as well. Maybe we come back to this issue of what maybe your story and your reflections what we can take from it in terms of how we need to help kids who are in that spot. And I know you're involved in that now as well. Just flipping back to where we were, you'd had this revolving door of in and out of various institutions. Yeah. Now, am I right in thinking that sort of cycle was broken when you took the decision to go to Thailand? Is that right?
No, it was just broken when I was in Walton Prison. 1 year again, it was like I'm sitting. I remember coming out on the landing in the shower fella. The first time someone ever said anything to me, he said, "Look, Bill, we're not getting any old, we're not getting any younger, and life doesn't get any easier." You know, and I'm looking at him, and he was about 60 in a pair of Reebok Classics, and I thought, fucking hell, that'll be me if I don't change my ways, you know what I mean? I was only early 20s, you know, and I didn't know how to get the attention of the staff because I had that fear of asking for help. So my way of asking for help was to climb on the prison roof. Which I did with 14 of us, climbed on the prison roof in Bolton when I was in segregation in army. I was in there for 8 months. I was on it like a GOAT. It's called a good order and discipline. You had to go and see the board of visitors every 28 days. Yeah, but they just kept sticking me back down the segregation unit. And this kid next door to me, I got friendly with him. And the guy opposite, I got friendly with the two neighbours in between me. And but these 2 kids had a pact with themselves that they were going to hang themselves because they were doing life. And I remember the alarms going off, my flap opening, and this screw saying to me, "Okay, how are you feeling? Are you all right?" I'm like, he's a bit like overly kind of like nice at the moment, you know what I mean? What's going on? Then I found out these 2 kids had killed themselves. They'd done themselves. It was fucking hell, you know, it was sad. So I remember, I tell this story loads of times, you know. I remember they said, "You want to phone your mum?" So I phoned my mum up. I couldn't even answer her. she just like started saying, "Oh my God, I've missed you. You're okay." I didn't think anyone cared, you know. At that time, it was like, wow, you know, this lump in my throat, I had tears welling up my eyes. I didn't know how to answer, so I didn't, because I thought if I blink, I'm going to have tears coming down my face, and these 2 screws, I'm going to see it, and they're going to think I'm weak, and so I'm just going to walk back. And she said, "Look, son," this the only words she said. She said, "I know you're hurting, and just you need help. Just ask for it." Now that's kind of like just sunk right in. Help, ask for help, and I thought, okay. So I wrote this letter to this probation officer. He came up, said, "What you need?" I said, "I need help." He said, "Okay, you've got a drug problem. Let's address it. Would you like to go into rehab?" I said, "Yeah." Ended up in Bristol, and it changed my life. Significant, kind of that climb on the roof took me to being in this. I always say that took me from climbing there to being in this rehab 18 months later in Bristol.
And how old were you then?
I was about 30, 31. And within, you know, I learned that I had a problem with drugs, and the only way to maintain clean time was to stay abstinent. So I thought that was a fucking drink, abstinence. You know what I mean? What's abstinence? So like I learned that I had to like live life without the use of drinking drugs. I was like, fucking hell, that's a big order, innit? You know, I like me drinking, I like me drugs. You want me to stop? He said, "Well, if you don't, you're going to end up on this never-ending cycle of prisons, institutions, and you know, you probably end up dead pretty soon." So I was stuck into this program, got involved. Kind of liked the fact that I was clean, and things started to improve. Got a passport, you know. I got, you know, a provisional driver's license. Things that we take for granted in life, but when you're in addiction and you're being robbed of like that humanness and empathy and kind of just normal way of living, it was like, wow,
It's an important thing.
it was incredible. It was incredible at that time, like.
And when did you first go to Thailand, and what were the circumstances?
Me mate, it's just come back. It was like 2005.
And was that shortly after rehab, just sort of within it?
Yeah, that was. I think it was. That was about 18 months clean. I got a few odd jobs, saved a little bit of money, got invited to Thailand. Never left the country. You know, I'm 31. I'd never left Liverpool unless it was on a sweatbox, going to another prison. So to go to Southeast Asia and get told about this culture, and you know, it was quite exciting. And when we planned to go 6 months backpacking, so I was like, wow, this is a young 6 months backpacking around Southeast Asia. It's really exciting times ahead. Got there, and I just fell in love with the place.
And I've not been to Thailand, and obviously this is going back some years now. But what sort of a country is it?
It's a tropical country. The food is, for me, it was probably the best food I've ever tried. It was cheap, and it was just like, I don't know, everyone was smiling at me, and you feel really welcome. Like, you don't get this on our council estate, you know. So yeah, fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the culture. So, you know, decided I was going to stay.
So you're in Thailand at this point. Tell me, when does being an English teacher come in?
It was just about paying the bills. That's all it was. It was about paying the bills. And I remember, you know, I was fighting overnight in this Muay Thai competitions, and I was earning peanuts. I was getting like nothing really, but I enjoyed it. So I took a TEFL, which is teaching English as a foreign language. So I said, take this course. You know, I bought a bachelor's degree down in Koh San Road in Bangkok in physical education, because, you know, I thought that's what you needed. Didn't really need it. But put in front of this class full of 50 students, only kids, and it was just bizarre. But I enjoyed it. I was working with them for like 6 months. I got to sort of like let go of in the end, because they said they were all walking around like little Larry Enfields. You know what I mean? What's happening, lads?
Well, I was going to say, I've just got this picture of loads of Thai kids going around talking scouse.
That's what I was going. I didn't know what to teach you English. I was going, all right, lad. They're going, all right, kid. What's happening, teacher? And he said, what? The teacher, I remember one of the teachers going up to me, she said, what part of Poland are you from? I said, what do you mean? She said, what kind of accent is that? I said, it's Liverpool.
So you mentioned you were only supposed to be going there for 6 months. What did your mate? Did he go back to the UK then, and you just stayed?
He did, yeah. He said, look, we need to go back. I went, I'm staying. I met this girl and I fell in love with this girl who couldn't understand a word of English. I was just very emotionally, like, immature. You know, you could put me in the ring and you could punch me head in and you could put a plaster on a cut and you could heal a broken arm. But, like, take me out the ring and I couldn't deal with the emotions and the feelings and, you know, it was quite raw. So rejection was a big one. If you told me you love me, you know, you can have me. That's how bad my self-esteem was, you know what I mean? I'll move in with you now. Shall I pack? You know, because, yeah, I had my ear bit off as a kid. You can imagine, I was only like 15, 16. So I had a lot going on, so like that kind of affected me, like my image and my self-esteem as well, and my confidence around the opposite sex. So, you know, that's where I was struggling in them areas. And I thought all these girls like me, you know, letting on to me, and they all want your money, you know what I mean? I never had none, but, you know, you can portray this image that you have got something, you know what I mean? So it was like kind of cool at the time.
And where does you mentioned earlier about Muay Thai and you getting involved in boxing in Thailand? How did that start, and what did it involve?
I think it's just to impress this girl. Remember we were going to the show, we watched these two kids fighting, and I went, I can do that. She went, I bet you can't. She was like an American, Japanese American. Her name was Noelle. And I went, hey Billy, I bet you want to get in there and kick their ass. I remember saying, yeah, I'll get in there and kick his ass. I thought, oh, fuck, what have I said? So I then put a pair of shorts on, jumping in the ring, and it was just, I enjoyed it. I got my ribs broken within the first couple of rounds, but like it was the feelings again, they were exhilarating. It was like that high intensity. It was shooting. I enjoyed that physical contact where I didn't feel really hurt with the punches and the power, but it was just something that I was quite used to, comfortable with, if you know what I mean. It's quite strange.
Is this in competitions, is it, in
Yeah,
Thailand?
I started getting involved.
Organised competition?
Yeah, I started getting involved in a lot of competitions. You know, because I could box, so it wasn't too hard to learn, you know, a few low kicks and elbows and that.
Well, my two daughters do Muay Thai, and it's a proper full-on combat, isn't it? It's
an
very
eightfold
intense.
martial art. It's see, I've done a lot of research on Thai boxing, and you know, it goes back to the Burmese war and everything. You know, the Burmese were, the Naikonom Tom was the main like Thai boxer that the Burmese said, you know, the Thais are blessed with venom in every limb. You know, literally you could fight with any part of the body, and I just enjoyed that kind of fighting style.
And was this every night you were fighting then?
Yeah, it was because you got to remember, you know, there's not much to do at the time, so I was just going out of a night, having a few competitions in the night, loads of show fights as well, because you go around and get little tips. I had no money, you know what I mean?
So you weren't getting paid for this? I was
getting tips,
right?
Green curries and me tea and me petrol and absolutely like peanuts. But yeah, I just enjoyed it. It was a way of getting fit, staying fit, and learning as well.
Now, you've not mentioned any issues with drugs or drink at this period, so you're still clean at this point?
Yeah, that was abstinence. So, you know, I maintained abstinence. I was not drinking, not smoking, not taking any drugs. It was quite, like, on it. I was working a program, so to speak.
But I know that there was a relapse, wasn't it, when you were in Thailand? How did that occur?
That's all woman.
Oh, really? Was it the same?
Bear's fault.
Was it Noelle?
I blame her. No, it wasn't her, to be fair. It was someone else. She kind of drifted, and I kind of maintained me clean time with her. But the second one, I don't know, I had a dictionary trying to communicate with her. She found out that she was with another fella. It broke my heart, and I didn't know what to deal with it. And I remember, like, it was clean. I was sitting at this bar, and he says to you, don't you know, you sit in a barber shop long enough, you're going to end up with an haircut. Uh-huh. So I'm sitting at this bar that long, I'm going to end up buying a drink here. And I bought a whiskey, and I don't even like whiskey. I thought this will solve the problem, because I was going through all this pain and turmoil and heartache, and I couldn't deal with it. And I thought this was the answer, this drink. And I knew it wasn't. There was part of me that was aware that, like, there was going to be an outcome that was going to be negative if it took it. But the fuckers kicked in. I thought, fuck it, just took that drink, and I felt it burning into my stomach, and I just had that warm feeling, and you know, next thing I'm phoning someone up and I don't want to drink now, I want drugs.
Right, and what happened then?
So we just got on this kid come and met me. We went to the Burma. It's called Myanmar, to be fair. It's kind of the title of the country changed. But yeah, it's the Burma. We went to Burma and bought China White.
Was that heroin, is it?
Yeah. Well, first we got Yaba tablets of these lady boys. We smoked them, and then that wasn't enough, and then it was heroin. So I got them all or nothing, you see. I'm an extremist.
That's why your podcast called.
It's like, yeah, you can't take me out for a drink, otherwise I'll end up in some foreign country smoking heroin.
And when you came back to Thailand, then were you continuing to use then?
Yeah, but as soon as I pick up, that's it. I hit the floor running. You know, I'm smoking these methamphetamine tablets. They're called Yaba WY, little red, pink tablets that when you put them on the fuel, they melt into like an oil, and it smells like chocolate, and it gives you this weird kind of a high intensity feeling that lasts forever. But at the time, and you know, it takes you away from all those feelings of being raw.
I'm feeling isolated.
And then, you know, my life kind of took a different turn. I developed a habit with them, so I needed to fund it. Needed to fight more, and needed to let's start selling these tablets now to foreigners because I can communicate, and you know, they want a bit of this and a bit of that, and I'll be the middleman, and you know, my own best customer. You give me the drugs to sell, I'll smoke 90% of them and sound like wheel and deal the wages at the end of the, you know.
And this reminds me, because those who haven't seen the film A Prayer Before Dawn, and I read the book first, of course, that was your first book. I think this was about the point where certainly the film starts, because it's Joe Cole, who's in Peaky Blinders, everyone will know, he's a fantastic actor. He plays you, and you're in as Joe. You're living this lifestyle which is kind of not much self-love involved and fairly chaotic, and then you're arrested. So just talk me through what happened on the film realistic in terms of, you know, how the arrest was and what you were arrested for, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, it was 90% accurate to a point where the director, John Stefan, he's adapted it from the book. So obviously it's a film based on the book and my life. But we communicated every day on the script, and it came to fruition. And this is, you know, so getting arrested, I remember, you know, I was in my room, and loads of weapons. I had no enemies, you know, that kind of stuff. I looked like an anorexic panda. I was fucking round a bend. It was just crazy. And something told me that there was I'd phoned someone had phoned me up actually, and it was just odd, the phone call that I received. It was from a Thai boxer who I wasn't really friendly with, and he was saying to me, "Where are you, Billy? I've got your shoes in my taxi tuk-tuk." And I was like half asleep because I just woke up, and I kind of told him. And then someone said to me, "Why is this phone here? This is odd, this. But this is just, you know, very random." And I looked out my door, and I seen these four men running up the stairs with guns out. I thought, fuck, I knew straight away they were police. They were like, they weren't like, no, they weren't like wearing uniforms, but
you could tell what they were.
I knew what they were, you know what I mean? I just knew, you know. I slammed the door, and it's exactly the way it was in the movie.
Because you don't go quietly in the movie. So was that right then, that you resisted?
Yeah, I'm not gonna put me. Hang on, there you are. Just let me get my coat.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute, to get my shoes on. I know they were gonna just. I was on drugs, you know.
And was there a lot of drugs in the apartment?
There was a lot of drugs in the apartment, but I secreted them. Bang! I've slammed the door. Let's throw these up my backside.
Oh, I thought that's what secreted meant. So, yeah. I mean, that must have been quite an effort to get them all up there.
Mate, it's easy when you've, like, being a seasoned expert at plugging drugs. If you've been to jail over the years, you know how to plug. You know, people are sticking phones up there now, aren't they? These were like little balls of weed and balls of tablets. So there were like 50 tablets here, a little lighter weed there, boom, like a couple of balls up, going up. All that was left was the Colt 45, loads of weapons, stun gun, samurai swords. I don't even know why I bought all this crap. But it's just, they look great, don't they, you know?
And what was the arrest for then?
Handling a stolen mobile phone.
Right.
No, serious. I'd like to say it was like a big mad like drug smuggling operation, and
why did the lad grass you up? Why did the Muay Thai guy? Why did he?
the police had spoken to him, right? Because I had the phone at the GPS. I was using it, phone on my mum and everything. You know, it was the SIM card was still active. That's how they caught me. So they've contacted him, and he knew I was a regular at the gym, and they expected me to turn up, but he's already told them. He's phoned me and told them where I was, so they've come that way. And yeah.
So what happens then?
That was the second time, by the way, of being arrested in prison.
In Thailand?
Yeah. That was the second time.
Was it?
Yeah.
What happened the
I've been
first?
to prison twice in Thailand. I never really wrote that in the book, did I?
No, I mean I only know the one. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
we'll.
Sneak peeks of all the behind
I won't
No.
really say to you much about it, but yeah.
When you then get arrested, what happens then in Thailand? Are you taken to like a police station, or are you taken to court? What's the score?
Oh, you go to a police station, and I was just through in this shell with these other guys. It was just dark, damp. Couple of days in there, eating rice and whatever else they feed you. And then I can't really. I think it was just I went to court. Couldn't understand what the proceedings that were getting mentioned to me, and ended up sitting on this like caged bus.
And you're going to jail then, are you?
Yeah, that was it. A couple of days. I think it was 3 days in a police station. I was in a prison.
And did you know how long you've been sentenced for, or what you've been convicted for?
I hadn't
or
been
anything like that?
sentenced at that time. They just hit me with like the charge inside. I couldn't understand. I wasn't really bothered. Wasn't really concerned. I was just out of it. It was only when I come around after a few weeks, I was aware of like, oh, hang on. I had to go through a detox and everything. My primary purpose at that moment is drugs.
Sure.
Not asked about like what I've been nicked for, how long I'm going to get. It's just I need drugs, I need more drugs, and I need to take away the feelings that I'm going through at the moment. Because I couldn't get them, my body started to go through a detox phase. The more I detoxed, the more my feelings became apparent, and they resurfaced. And then I wanted to know when I was getting out, what was going on. And then I was going to court in shackles then. And then
So you've been like on remand, had you then?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you went to court for your sentencing.
Yeah.
And did you know once you got to court, did you know what your sentence was at that point?
No, it wasn't just the sentence, it was the charge at first. It was like, they said it was lax up. See, there's a cover at the front of the book, right? The first one, it's got my name on it, and it's got the charge underneath it. So it's got William John Moore inside, and then got lax up, which means theft. So it was theft of a mobile phone. And that's what they said. So I thought, okay, that's not too bad. I was expecting like to be charged with this gun, and I know they never found any drugs because I smoked them. Half of them got robbed. So I can do that. And then he went and said, Sam B, I don't know, what the fuck does that mean? He said, oh, that's 3 years.
3 years
and that was
for
it. Yeah.
stolen mobile.
Yeah, so they gave me 3 years. And then I went back to prison.
And what was the prison? I know this isn't his proper name, but they call it the Bangkok Hilton, do they?
It was Klong Prem. There's different. There's Bangkwang, the Bangkok Hilton. It's just a name. It's like a generic name for a prison. There's like, see what happens is in Klong Prem, there's like three or four different prisons within that system. There's like it's a big piece of land. You know what I mean? There's Bombat drugs prison. There's a women's prison. There's Lads Yao. There's Klong Prem. So I think it holds in a total 20,000 inmates.
And obviously, you've been in a prison in the UK. What were you expecting in terms of what life would be like in there when you were on that journey to the prison, having been sentenced?
I don't really know what. I didn't really go through that. I just felt it was quite daunting. And you can I remember just thinking, you can think all kinds at the time, but nothing particular was going through my mind.
So you didn't really know what to expect?
No, I was locked, trust me, I was out of it. They'd give me a load of drugs in the police station.
Sort of sedatives?
Because what happens is I told them that I needed medication, so they took me to this chemist. So I bought methadone, Temazepam and diazepam and Xanax. And then he just give me the whole bag.
Got you.
And then I started just popping pills while I was in it. It's just odd. Over here, it never happened. Never happened. everything would be like protocol, taking her off you, taking to the doctor to see. There, they just go, you know, well, you take them tablets, okay. And I was like, yeah, they are, shan't. Fucking big brown bag full of drugs.
And that,
I had like loads of sleepers and downers in that bag. I just started taking them over the days.
and when you got to the prison, then you were taken to your cell. Obviously, describe the cell for us.
The cell, I can describe that like it's quite clear. I walked in, it was like a mass grave of bodies on the floor. There was no beds. I was wondering why there was bras and thongs hanging up on the bars. Like, what the fuck's going on here? Where's the beds? There were fellas, transgenders. I got put in this little spot in the cell by the toilet, and there was a guy that had died. I found out after speaking to this other lady, but that was next to me. Her name was Tiffany. He had this little top on. Remember it? No money, no honey. I thought, I'm fucking glad I'm skinned. He had these little blue Temin shorts on with this big crazy bulge, and he kept staring at me. It was like fucking making me feel uncomfortable. And he was going, I like your blue eye. I thought, fuck, I hope he doesn't like the brown one. Fucker.
And this is with the dead body at the other side of you.
And I went, I didn't even get on it, to be fair. I was just like, I'm knackered by this time, know what I mean? And he went, he did. No problem, he go on Monday. And I think, this is fucking Friday, you're fucking joking, aren't you? What are you going to do? So I went to sleep next to this guy for 2 days, which was just surreal. It was like, fucking get him out. But it was a Thai holiday. Everything comes to a standstill in Thailand. You've got holidays, you know what I mean? So there was a couple of days in there with him decomposing, blanket over his face, me next to him, and the lady boy he was talking to on the opposite side. And I just looked around, and it was just fucking crazy.
How many people were in the cell?
There was 80 in the cell. And the
80?
Yeah, I think the cell was about the size of this room, but like twice in length.
And no beds, I presume no chairs. What's the sleeping situation? How do you sleep?
Sleep in threes. So you've got, it's head, toe. So like there was like 1, 2, 3 in lines right across. So I'd be against the wall, and I'd have some other guys' legs in between my legs, and then I'd have someone wrapping themselves over you. So it was like it was like a tin of sardines. You just it was very intimate, you know, in that way, very close. And he didn't really care. There was none of that like, oh, get your arms out there. Everyone was just hugging each other and holding each other. It was like a big mad orgy, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this is weird. This, no, I don't like it.
But you had no option, did you?
No, it was just
lack of space.
It was just crazy, you know what I mean? I thought I'm going to end up falling in love with this fella next to me in a minute. You know what I mean? That was my biggest fear. I'm going to write me mad unless I tell I fell in love with this fella called Bob. I'm not coming home. But
and what about things like just sort of sanitary food? You getting washed or?
Oh, there was a bin, like a dustbin at the end of the cell with like this pipe dripping into it. So twice a day, water would go in and fill this bin up, and you'd have a toilet which was just a basic hole in the ground, and it wasn't covered. So, you know, you go to the toilet, you've got 80 people staring at you, which is like, oh, fuck. The height of self-obsession is on you, you know. When you're sitting there, and like for me, you know, my stomach wasn't the best, and I was like, I'm gonna go there now, and they're all talking to you and chatting away to you, you're trying to do your business, and you just go away, you know, and you've got to flush the toilet with that water, you've got to brush your teeth with the same water out of that bin, wash your face. That's between like 80 of you, so you've got it's quite minimal. But yeah, it stinks.
And what about food?
Food was like a plate of like sticky rice every single day. But it was like one plate, and 5 years would be on that plate. So you'd all have your rice off that plate. So it'd be a big lump of sticky rice. And then it'd be like a bowl. And I remember the first time I stuck this, like a thick dog bowl, basically metal, loads of tins in it that they supplied. It was just, this kind of soup that you couldn't identify, and it stunk. And the minute I put this like wooden spoon in and pulls out this chicken's head with half a face and the eyeball in it, I was like, you're fucking joking, aren't you? You know what I mean? I went to lash it because I don't really like all that stuff. And this Thai with that, have you not eat, I love that. And he's talking, and she started sucking on the head, and I was just thinking, this is disgusting, this. No, it's true, yeah, it's true, you know, when...
And what you I mean, I know life went on like this for a period of time, and we'll move on to the next stage of the story shortly. But how's your mental health at this stage?
I was suicidal. I got to a stage where I wanted to end it. I remember asking this guy to sell me his laces, and he said he couldn't, because if I kill myself collectively as a cell, they'd be punished. Now, we had a guy that used to sit up through the night, every hour on the hour, right, and watch the whole, observe it was just another inmate. So there'd be like a head inmate in the cell. It'd be going, okay, so you've been nominated. You're 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, right the way through, making sure that no one ends the life, basically. Because there was 10 rules, and I couldn't understand them. 10 rules that were getting read out on the tannoy every morning, and one of them was that you couldn't commit suicide. I was the fucking most strangest rule I've ever heard, to be fair. You know what I mean? But collectively as a cell, you get punished. I think it's just too much for them.
And I mean, it sounds an odd thing to say, but your decision not to end it was quite a selfless act, bearing in mind what you were going through.
It was, yeah. It was really, it kind of brought a little bit of clarity. Because I couldn't face reality. It was really, it was a struggle. I tell you what, right, this is how it is, right? You're going in a cell with 80 people, right? You're in there for months and months on end, right, initially. I've never felt so lonely in all my life. There's 80 people sitting next to me. I've never felt so lonely in all my life. I knew at that moment that was the loneliest I'd ever felt. When I couldn't tell someone how sad I felt, how much I miss my family. The communication was in broken English, and you couldn't. They go, what? So you knew that what you were trying to convey to someone wasn't being understood clearly. So it kind of rocked you a lot, and I just felt so on my own at that time. I didn't really get on well with the other foreigners because I'd react a lot. And it separated me from them because I was fighting with them a few times. But that was just.
I mean, you mentioned I've heard you talk before about this issue of the fighting that takes place. What was the situation with drugs at that point? Were drugs readily available in the prison?
It was just pharmaceuticals, basically. It wasn't as ready as available as you'd like to think. It was just, it's like tramadol. I was addicted to tramadol because I had a lot of opiate issues. So I was taking 10 of them every day. I had to pay for them. I had to borrow cigarettes, this, that.
And how are you funding that?
So we get these Christian missionaries come in twice a week, right? So you got something called Prisoners Abroad that supply you 2,000 baht, which is a lot of money, for an inmate, especially in a Thai prison. They give you that, which is about £25 a month, basically. But it was enough. They were giving you protein tablets, vitamins. They were getting sold. The money that they were giving, I was buying drugs with it. The missionaries that were coming up, they were buying your food, and then you'd manipulate them and come out with a shop store, and they'd buy you cigarettes, and they'd get. So it was just a way of ways and means to get more and to do what I needed to do.
And did you have enough, or did you get into debt?
Oh, I was in debt a lot. I got being threatened with HIV infected syringes made out of. There were pens that were improvised into syringes. There was a lot of there was a group of HIV infected Thais called the samurais, and they kind of completely tattooed the body from head to toe. They were emancipated. You knew they were done dead. They weren't getting medication. They weren't asked. They were injecting heroin, and I was in debt to them as well.
And they were threatening to.
Oh yeah, I remember me and this Italian kid. They pulled out these syringes on us, and they were going to I thought, you know what? I don't really want to die in that way, a long, slow death that drags out for years with your blood injected into my bloodstream. And they were really, you need to pay this debt. And I remember pleading and begging these missionaries, and it wasn't a hell of a lot of money, but it was quite a lot to me at the time.
And did you? I mean, obviously, I'm glad to hear that you were able to stop this happening. Did you witness this act that they were threatening being done on anyone else, or did you see any other acts of violence or anything like that done to anyone else who perhaps weren't able to pay?
The most horrifying experience I witnessed was watching this young lad. And I remember I'd seen him a few times. He had a bandana on. You know, he kind of stood out, as I say. He was only a young kid, about 25, and he was running around. And one afternoon, I seen him running, but he was like sluggish with his pace. And this other kid was running behind him with a knife, and it was a big old knife. And I remember sitting there watching this. It was going in slow motion. A guy next to me, a Thai guy next to me, he's run out with a metal chair and whacked him to stop him from running any further. He slipped. He had a pair of flip-flops. You could hear it. Flop, flop, flop as he's getting chased. He's hit the deck right in front of me, by the way. And this other kid, similar age, used to start stabbing him. And it must have been about 50 times. And I'm watching this, right? This is straight up, right? I'm watching this, right? And I'm watching every stab going in. I couldn't take my eyes away. And it was like, they were all death shots, like in the neck, in the lungs, in the heart. And it was just going in. It was just, but it wasn't in a frenzy, you know, like someone's going fast. It was just like calculated, and every it was just targeted. And he was just dying there. And it was the screams were so inhumane. I've never heard nothing come out of a human since, or even then. It was just, the screams were unbearable. And you know what they did? They left him there, walked away. These two guards come over, kicked him, his lifeless body, blood everywhere. I was watching it. I was like, fucking hell. And then he just put him on this like trolley and then pushed him out the building. I thought, oh, he's all right. He'd be all right. They took him to Aussie because he was still breathing. I thought, oh, he'd be fine. You don't realise, do you? It's like, you get a message like a couple of hours later, that kid died in the hospital upstairs on the operating theatre. He'd been punched that much. And then in reality, it's home, and I'm sitting in my shell. I owe these guys money. And I'm replaying this vividly in my mind every single night. It was shocking. And I was blaming myself for not intervening. What could I have done? Why didn't I step in? I could have stopped this. I could have at least done something. Until I got to like that place of acceptance where I thought, look, it's not my problem.
Oh, you can't in those circumstances.
It's like you were yards. It was like literally from me to you now, Simon. I was thinking, what would I have done? That could have been me on the receiving end of that. I've had said it, because it was quite I'm not messing, right? I don't care who you are, right? It was quite a frightening experience being in that prison, right? It really was, because there were gangs. There was gangs, and I was on my own.
Did you have any fights at all?
I had loads of fights. I got to a stage where, I was put on death row in a unit. I was doing 3 years, and these kids were getting like executed within weeks, and they put me in there because they said, you know what, you're so volatile, you're going to end up dead. So we're putting you in this place, so like your punishment. Think that's the time when I wanted to end it. When I said to you, I wanted to buy them. It's the fucking most depressing time of my life. Thinking, I can't fucking cope with this no more. I can't cope with this. It's just too much for my mind. I'm never going to leave this country. I believed it at that time. So yeah, that was it.
I just got to say at this point, the fact that you're the man you are now, mate, and this insight and clarity you've got, and we're going to move on to the fantastic things you're doing and the great opportunities you've got in the future. But bearing in mind what you've been through, it's just overwhelming that you've managed to maintain the strength and the positivity to come through it, man. So, Bill, I really respect you for everything you're doing, and you're so open. This is the point in the story which, for me, started that process of your ascent from that dreadful situation where you felt you'd hit rock bottom. And boxing makes an appearance again, or Muay Thai makes an appearance then, because as I understand it, you then started training, you started actually fighting again in the prison. Is that right? Yeah,
because I felt to myself, I got to a stage where they paid these debts, these Christian missionaries. There was a point where so I'm walking around, I'm hungry, I've got no food, I'm eating like the prison fucking rubbish basically, which is shite. And the boxing kind of helped. It was like the unity and comradeship, and they supported me. You got extra food, and got involved. I even became a Muslim, changed my religion.
I've heard you talk about this before, because this was Again, this impressed me because I know we'll come to a minute that your motivations in conversion weren't necessarily spiritual at first.
No, they weren't.
But when I've heard you talk about this before, you were very positive about the Islamic faith in terms of, rather than me telling the story, how did you come to convert to Islam?
It was recent. It wasn't that long. It wasn't long after I paid these debts off. Or someone else had paid the debts off, should I say? I'd walk around the prison, and like I said, I was hungry, and I'd seen these group of Muslims eating all this food, and I always stare at them. And one of the guys called me over and said, "Why don't you join us today?" And I went, "Okay, yeah." I enjoyed it. Loved the
That was
food.
good food, was it?
It was great food. It was like it was cooked well. You know, they had a few mod cons going on at the time. A few bit of money as well. And I said, "Oh, is it okay if I come back tomorrow?" He said, "Look, only the Muslims don't really come here and eat." So the next day I had a sarong on and a skull cap, and I changed my name to Yusuf Muhammad. I showered him and he didn't pass an eyelid. He just fed me, but then he moved me into the cell for a year. So I still did the Islamic religion. You know, learned to speak. I read the Quran. I learned to speak a little bit of Arabic as well.
And what were your impression of them as people? Because obviously there was a lot going on in the world then. And
Yeah, my impression was like, you know, they were all fucking bombing people and killing people, and you know that's all I ever heard. And when I actually sat down with them, I found them to be the most pleasant people you could ever meet, loving and caring and very supportive. And he said to me, you know, there's people in the world on both sides that are both bad and good, Bill, and it's not about us being we're a nation of peace. Islam means peace, and I learned a lot. And I kind of like became a little bit more open-minded. I didn't feel that judgment towards them anymore.
that really came across in the book, this open-mindedness, because the other thing I remember was you got a friend who was transgender, was a transgender woman. It was John.
Yeah.
And again, that impressed me because, you know, you were open-minded to the possibility that, you know, if someone was going to treat you with respect and kindness.
Yeah, because I hated ladyboys. I hated transgenders. I had this fear because I had an uncle who was gay, and I thought he fancied me growing up. And I thought, oh, he's going to try and sleep with me, because my mum used to say to me, "Why don't you go and stay with your uncle in Bournemouth for the summer holidays?" And I was like 11. I thought, and then my dad goes, "He's a bit of a fruit, him, you know." And I go, "Oh my God, that's it. He wants to sleep with me." And my head would go with it. So I had this mad, crazy fear of like gays and that. It was like, whoa. And so that kind of like instilled in me for years. No one ever touched me, by the way, you know what I mean? It was just the force and the fear. So I had this like, oh, not for me. But then when I got battered and I was in this compound and I was getting treated by this ladyboy called John, showed me some care, and I was like, wow, fucking hell, you know, this is like just a human being who's showing me some empathy and some kindness, and it kind of changed my view on it. It was like I started to talk to him and learn about his, you know, learn about him as a person, and kind of like accepted and understood that, you know, if you want to be what you want to be, then that's your choice. And, you know, I'm not here to kind of put you down or judge. And that opened my mind. And I think being over there and the experiences that I did have really changed my life.
Well, that again, that came across in the book. And if we're going to pull some positives from this, because I'm pleased to say that from my perspective, this is now when the story really does become positive. But you know, that learning at the end in terms of both the Islamic faith and then in terms of your friend and you opening your mind to different perspectives and different people, that was a positive I certainly took from the story. Tell me about when you left prison in Thailand, because you mentioned that you'd convinced yourself that you weren't going to leave. How did you depart that prison?
It was called the repatriation. I'd been speaking to the embassy for months. I'd had an injury. I'd come off a motorbike in Thailand, Laos, prior to getting arrested. A bike had hit me. I'd had an accident. The bike that I was on kind of went in the air, landed on my chest, broke a couple of ribs, punctured me lung, ripped all my intestines. I had a big hole in my stomach, the handlebar sticking out of me. I was in this hospital for about 3 months. So I had terrible injuries, which I still got today. They kind of put in a repatriation on emotional ground, you know, like the well-being grounds. You know, after like almost 3 years of being in there. He ended up getting repatriated to the UK and went to Wandsworth.
And when because you've been in Thailand for 5 years at this point, was it?
Yeah, 5 years, yeah.
Tell me about when you arrived back in the UK after this incredible, traumatizing experience. How did it feel when you walked back into your own country?
It was like a culture shock. You know, everything. I was like comparing everything. So you go on holiday for a couple of weeks, don't you? You come back and you want to compare like the sunset, you know, I was comparing everything. It was like really, I'd learned to speak Thai fluently. I could read and write it. I'd converted to Islam. I had a lot of things going on that had changed. So I wasn't the same person that I was when I left the country. Came back someone else. Found it quite difficult to adapt back to the UK climate for the kick-off. And the people, it was just really difficult, you know what I mean? When I found myself, once I was released, slipping back into the depths of despair and addiction, and on that rocky road for a few years.
Was it in Wandsworth that you first started to write the first book?
I did, yeah. I wrote a little, like when I was in Thailand, I wrote like a daily journal. So it was like actual factual documentation of what was going on in the day. So it was there. So that's crazy. That never happened anywhere. So I'll write it down. So it was like, it was there. It was accurate. And I smuggled that out in letters because I don't think they wanted you to kind of like be writing about what was going on. So I used to write it and put it in letters that had been written to me, and I'd take them back out. And then when I got to Wandsworth, I wrote a story on an A4 piece of paper and showed it to a teacher in the education department who was quite like impressed. Said, "You need to write a book." I thought, you know, I really wanted to write this. It was cathartic. It was like that, you know, it was therapeutic for me to write because I was sitting in a cell with someone and I couldn't really tell him that. Like, I just getting up in the morning, right? This is the trying to tell someone like who's not like known to this kind of world that I've just lived in, that like to get a cup of coffee, I had to wait for this kid to stab himself in the neck.
This is in Thailand.
Yeah, right. While everyone observed it. It was so normal for me to just talk about this at the time. And this guy, I remember, just come out stabbing himself in the chest, then took himself hostage. It was weird. He had AIDS, HIV, whatever. It was blood everywhere. He was in this gang. And he was taking himself hostage. And our whole prison started just like zoning in on him and watching him. And first thought to me was, oh, while everyone's distracted, I can get some hot water. And when you're trying to tell someone that story, you go, what? That was, look, mate, I've been here years, you know. It became so normal for me.
And getting that down onto paper was therapeutic for you.
Yeah, so, like, look, watching someone trying to kill themselves, right, or get some hot water, I want a coffee. That was what was going on in my
diversion.
mind. Yeah, so that was like the way and when I told someone that, I was like, wow, how did you feel? I said, I felt grateful I could get the water because the queue was so long. You know, you'd never normally get any hot water, and you know, anyone who like wakes you up first thing in the morning, do you want to think, don't you? You know what I mean? So like, it's just being able to tell someone something, I felt like again peculiar and out of place because it was so normal that when I tell people, I could see the shock horror in their face and they'd be like, what?
And when you found this therapeutic doing your writing, by the time you'd left Wandsworth, was it in sort of a complete book form from your perspective?
It was sort of like the beginning, middle, and end, but like, you know, like you could put the meat and potatoes in it, but it needed a bit of gravy poured over it. Basically, there's a lot of gaps, and I had a bit of. I got a publisher after being rejected by about 20 publishers in the first place, to finally getting someone who said, you know, I'll take you up on it. I'll give you €500 up front. Blah blah blah. You need to finish it in this time. I was outside. I had a little bit to finish off. Kind of finished the finished format and sent it off to him, and he got it published.
And at this point, what's your relationship with your family like? Because obviously you're out of prison. And did you go back to Liverpool?
I went back to the last place I left, which was boring because I didn't know where else to go. So I went back there, went to my friends, started sofa surfing. Things took a turn for the worse. I got back involved in drugs because I was mixing in them circles. Couldn't cope with how I was feeling in the world around me, and ended up in hospital in Bournemouth on death's door again. And phoned my mum and she said, "Come home, I'll send someone else to get you." And that was it. About it.
And were you, what was the family situation when you got home? Were your mum and dad still together?
No, my mum and dad had left years ago. My mum had remarried since I'd been away. Met this guy. He was quite, he's still with him. Best thing that's ever happened to her, to be fair. He was absolutely incredible. I was living in my mum's house. It was quite difficult because I was sharing a room with my brother Joe, and it was just, and I was using drugs as well, and I was trying to hide it, and I was trying to mask a lot of pain, and it kind of took me to going into a rehab and detox again.
So let's just cover this off, because I know now you've been clean and sober for some years. I want to come back to what's happening with the book at this point, but I'm so thrilled for you that you're now bang on top of this issue and that you're clean, you're in great form, you're in great shape. What was it, rehab, which eventually got you to sort of close the door on this part of your life?
No, it was getting diagnosed with cancer. I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, so that's above and below the diaphragm. By this time, I was 5 years clean. Give it to stage, I'm back home. 5 years clean, in recovery. House, car, everything you can imagine. Written a book. You wanted to make a movie. Life is fucking swimmingly, fucking doing really well. So I get this diagnosis. So I'm on chemotherapy now. So I go from 15 stone to 9.5 stone within months. Lose all my hair. Lose my job. The girlfriend left me. Couldn't pay the rent on the house. Broke into the neighbour's house for the Wi-Fi code. Got arrested. I know it's petty, but and then I ended up standing in a dock in Liverpool Crown Court and getting sentenced to 2.5 years. And
that was the last time you went to prison?
That was the last time I went to prison. That's when I wrote the second book.
That's right. Well, I want to come to that because I knew that. But that was the point there where by the time you went to was that Walton, was it?
It was Walton, yeah. And
were you then, from a treatment perspective for your cancer, were you in remission?
I was in remission, yeah. This sounds like it's heavy, but it's I think it's, it was just like I was thinking to myself, fuck, what the fuck's happening now? You've just been through that. You've come back. You've got your shit together. You've got everything going on now. And then you get diagnosed with this. What's happening? So that led to a relapse because there was on medication and I'm taking loads of painkillers. I don't do painkillers well. I've got an allergic reaction to drugs. I don't break out in lumps and bumps. I break out in pain, misery, and like long-term fucking, it was just a prison, the lot.
Sure.
So yeah, go through all of the stuff, thinking I'm going to die, spent everything I ever had. The money that I made off this movie, spent it on drugs. Didn't invest anything for fucking why. I've got no kids, no relationship, it's just me. Just fucking have a party and go out in style. And then I'm sitting in the oncologist department waiting for me demise, thinking that's it, sad. The final results have come in, you've been through everything, you've done the 6 rounds of chemo. Right, just take it on the chin, Bill. I had this acceptance, it's quite hard. I don't know if anyone can identify with it, but I had this acceptance where I thought, I'm going to die, but I'm all right with it, I thought I got to a point where I kind of like made it, I was going to be okay with it. I never felt so serene and like cool and calm in my life. It was just odd. So I was like, yeah, all right, mate, sorry, just tell me. I was I'm glad to say, Mr. Moore, you're going to be okay. I went, what? What do you mean I'm going to live? He said, you're going to be all right. And I was fucking fuming. Because I thought, you're joking, aren't you, mate? I'm fucking loads of debt now. He said, well, at least you're here to pick up the bills.
That's doctors for you, isn't it?
But that was it. I was like, and I said, he was like, because I'd expected this. And I thought, fuck. And then it hit home. It broke me down. I was like, wow, you know what I mean? there was a lot going on. But I'd already been arrested by this stage, you know what I mean? I'd fucking...
Well, let's just go back, because I mean, I'm glad you got that, your diagnosis and prognosis, obviously fantastic, and by this point, I'm glad you'd achieved your sobriety and that you were clean. Let's just go back a little to when the book turned into a film.
Yeah.
I mean, bearing in mind that you were still facing challenges, that must have been a surreal period of your life, in terms of you were having this film made about your very cinematic story up to then. So there must have been a bit of glamour involved. I mean, was there like a premiere for the film or anything like that?
The Cairns Film Festival, which was the biggest film festival in the world, isn't it, really? You know, we had the first showing of the movie at 2,000 people in the audience watching it. Everyone was dressed up in a tuxedo. It was just... And we had a standing ovation for 8.5 minutes at the end of it, which I was quite shocked about. I went to the guy next to me who put the money into it. I said, is that a good thing or what? Because I didn't know. He said, look, we're in France. He said, the French are the harshest critics you can ever come across. If they don't like this, they'll boo you whether you're here or not. He said, they love it. Well done, congratulations. And the response the next day, and the reviews and all the papers and the media was like, this movie, blah, blah. I was like, wow, I didn't expect that to become what it became. It was just incredible, and I was just overwhelmed. I think that kind of... I didn't know what to deal with that, to be fair.
Well, it's understandable. I mean, anyone, by the way, who hasn't either read the book A Prayer Before Dawn or seen the film, what we've done today is a whistle-stop tour through all this. Yeah. It doesn't replace the quality and the gripping nature of both the book and the film. They're both fantastic pieces of work. But then you wrote the latest book, which is Fighting for My Life.
That actually wasn't the title that I wanted, you know.
Was it not?
No, I mean, I've got to kind of solo rights, didn't they? So they have to make... They decided that they wanted their title. But it was actually my title, because I'm quite flamboyant with titles. I wanted to call it Surrender from the Heart.
I like that.
Yeah.
So you've got a Prayer Before Dawn. No one's going to buy that bill. A Prayer Before Dawn, what a book, what a name. They're going to think it's religious. Look, it became a movie. See you later. Right? Ta-ra. It was a bestseller. Right? So what do you want to call the next one? I want to call it Surrender from the Heart. You know, why do you want to call it that? Because, like, you know, when you just, like, you surrender, right? I grew up in movies in the 80s called No Retreat, No Surrender, and everyone there, no one ever gave up. I said, but for me, just to actually say, look, here, look, the war's over within. Like, just surrender. Let's just live now and stop trying to fight these unknown demons or these battles that you're putting in front of yourself. Just surrender and put your hands up and go, okay, I'm not going to win. You know, the war's over. And that was the reasoning behind that. But, you know, they wanted the title. They had a little meeting and just changed it. Well, which is understandable. I had no, you know, they did communicate with me on that. So, and I was okay with it.
And I don't want to spoil the book for anyone who's going to experience it, because it's just such a great book, Billy. It really is. And we're going to have it on our socials, links to it. We're coming up to Christmas, guys, and I really would say that if you want to buy someone a present, which they're going to enjoy, I'd buy Billy's latest book. It's fantastic. I tell you what gives me the most positivity and happiness in terms of how the story has unfolded. In terms of reading the book and also in terms of hearing you on other podcasts and speaking separately, is your relationships now sound very good. I mean, I'll come to, obviously, you've got a lovely missus now, and your relationship with your brother, who you mentioned briefly before, Joe, is great. But what I found most striking is that your dad sadly passed away. And as I understand it, before he did, you and him had perhaps not mended your relationship, but you'd made some real progress.
Yeah. Never really, and it's still, even like to the day he died, I never knew anything about his background. He never talked about growing up, so. But I understood that he obviously had some problems because, you know, he was drinking a lot, and my mum had left him. She'd had enough. but he never got over that. It's like, you know, my ma had left him, but he'd been with her for years, and he still loved her till the day he died, even though she'd remarried. And my mum was there at his bedside every day when he was on his way out. And I think it was the first time I ever heard him say he loved me. And I was like, I remember looking into his eyes, and our eyes locked. I always remember this. Our eyes locked, and I saw everything in that brief moment. All that pain, all the sadness, all that regret in his eyes. And we both looked away. And I remember like feeling like all these emotions coming up. And it was at that moment I had that forgiveness. I thought, you know, he's said that without having to actually say it. It was like just, and that's what happened in the movie at the end, because they said to me, would you like to play your own father? My dad had just died of cancer, and I was like, and I'd been diagnosed whilst on set with cancer, so I'm standing, so it was quite surreal. I'm playing my own father who just passed away from cancer in this prison, watching this young lad walking towards me, and the director's like, this is you, this is your son, what would you say to your son? And I was like, no, like, I couldn't even like string of sentences together. All I wanted my dad to say was, I love you. And it was, it was a sad moment, but it was a way of like celebrating his life. But I couldn't say it. I still couldn't say it. And this young actor's coming, and he's done a character study, so he knows exactly how I'm feeling as an individual towards my dad at that time. There was loads of anger, all that going on. So he's playing that role really well. And I'm staring into his eyes, and I'm looking at a younger version of me, and I'm stepping into my dad's shoes and saying, this is what I want to say, but I couldn't say nothing. And the camera was on me for about 5 minutes. I remember that well, because it was 5 o'clock in the morning, the last scene of the movie. We're in the Philippines, and we're filming this in a prison. And the director went, cut. He said, that was the best scene that we've ever filmed. He said, because everything, you know, that silence said more than you could ever say, you know.
And your real life and this piece of art in terms of the production of the film almost crossed.
Yeah.
Didn't it? In terms of how you were feeling emotionally, and I guess to some extent you achieving a degree of closure on different parts of your life.
Yeah, I get to that point, you see, where it gets me, I feel it, it rises up, the emotions and the feelings, and I push it down, especially on camera. I'm quite like, you know, I don't really want to express myself. It's not that it's a weakness, it's, I know it's more, it's probably like attractive as well, you know, when people go, you know what, really? Because I know, right, when people send me messages and they go, look, Bill, I feel like that, mate. I felt like that. Really, when you're on your own, don't care how hard you are, how big you are, who you think you can fight, or how tough you tell yourself that you are. You know, when you're on your own, mate, I've been shot, I've been stabbed, I've had my ear bit off, I've spent years in solitary confinement, I've fought prison officers, I've fought inmates, I've fought like my brothers, my sisters, I've fought on the streets, I've had guns and knives and all that. You know what, right? You put me in that little room on my own, right? There's no one there but me, right? And I'm left with how I feel, right? And I've got to communicate with me and tell them, you know, be real and not put this mask on and pretend. Like when I got to that stage in my life where I thought, you know what, there's no escape, you know, lad. You know, when you just own the fact that you're hurting, that you're upset. You know, don't be ashamed of telling anyone that you're scared. You know, it's okay not to be okay. And at that moment, my life kind of just went, I'm all right with it. And I do like that today. I mean, like you said about relationships, like, I'm going to say this, right, because I might not get the chance to say it, right. When I got diagnosed with cancer, they said I couldn't have kids. I never had kids. I was 42, didn't want kids. I did want them earlier on, but, you know, it kind of got to a point where I thought, I'm not having them. I've burnt everything with this chemo. I met this girl, and we had this beautiful baby boy. That was like, whoa. I was 47. I was like, 47. I'm having this little miracle. Um, but that was like never meant. I don't know. To be fair, that was just like, oh, that just like, blew me away. Yeah.
It's so powerful, brother. Honestly, I'm so grateful to you for sharing all of this with us. And I mean, that a wonderful, inspirational illustration of how your life's changed. Tell me about Joe, because Joe's your brother. I love Joe's Instagram. I love his antics. He seems an absolutely top kid, a warm human being. And I know your relationship with Joe is another thing which has really strengthened
That's
in
another
these
one.
last couple of years.
That's he's the most innocent person you could ever come across. He was just there. That's what it was. As we were growing up, he was there. We never had a relationship because we didn't know how to relate with him. We never had that. We couldn't talk or we couldn't play. We couldn't like take him out and do things because it was just there was nothing there. It was like just a shell for years.
So he's got autism, Joe, is that
Yeah,
right?
Joe's got autism. He was just a shell. He couldn't communicate. He couldn't even talk. He'd go missing a lot. We'd have to go look for him. He'd cause a lot of problems for us because he'd smash the house up. Not like smash it up, but he'd wreck it. He'd pull all the stuff out the cupboards. He'd flowers, sugar. My mum would wake up and there'd be chocolate all over the walls. And he was just one of those kids who didn't know what was going on. But he was just happy doing it, you know. So I just think, like, when I got out of prison, I just shared a bungalow with my mum, 2 dogs, her husband and my brother. And I had a tag on. I was like, fuck this can't get any worse than this. And my brother was just talking to me and I was on my phone, liking some post. Don't even know who he was like. Just, yeah, that's a good, I like your roast dinner and, you know.
Well, we all do that.
Yeah,
don't we?
and like,
We're all
he's
guilty
trying
of
to,
that.
my brother's trying to talk to me for the first time. And I'm like, yeah, I'll speak to you in a minute. I'll come back tomorrow. I'll speak to you next week. And then he come in one day and he just sat next to me trying to say something. Then I was going, yeah, hang on. And then he just got up. And it was the first time I thought, hang on. Put the phones on. The people that love you, it's the ones that are sitting next to you. They're the ones that are the closest to you. Not someone in Japan who's got some fucking teriyaki on the go, you know, and you're liking that. You know, so have a little chat with your brother. And I sat down and I said, okay, what have you been up to today? The first time I really asked him. And he started to tell me. And I thought, oh my God, this kid's incredible. You know, this is just like, he's just a really, and he gets angry and he gets upset, but he's happy and he's got the emotions that we've all got, you know. So we done some sponsored walks because he was getting bullied on the bus. He wouldn't go to the house.
Yeah, I read about this when you tweeted about this, didn't you?
Yeah, and that went viral. You know, he started getting bullied on the bus. He was getting called a mong and a spaz, and by cute kids that's going to school, and you know, he wasn't selling anyone. He just wouldn't go to work. So he was staying in, he was putting weight on, and I was like, fucking hell, he's sitting there watching soaps, what's up, lad? So we eventually got it out of him. I tweeted it, and then there was a lot of support. And then I said to him, look, so he joined the boxing club with me. So he took him to the gym with me every weekend. So he started enjoying that. Started being a little bit more proactive with him at a bit of time. So we decided to start like doing a charity, and we made £27,000 by getting off the couch and walking up Snowdon within 6 months. Both of us, really. And he was getting support from a lot of celebrities that were like footballers. Like, you know, Robbie Fowler was sending him tops and Razor Other Kings down to see him. And, you know, Balassi and everyone was really getting behind him. Because he was just so real and innocent. And, you know, and to this day, you know, with him yesterday, and he phones me and it's great. It's the most loving soul you could ever come across. And he makes me want to be a better person. And that has also changed my view on, you know, people with disabilities. And I'm regular on that autism awareness. Because that was a shameful word to me years ago. Handicap, no, I can't be asked. You know. I hated it. You know, I didn't really want to attach myself to my brother. I felt like I sort of rejected him for most of his life. So yeah, it was my amends, really.
But again, this is your openness, and this is what I admire so much in you, because you've found that ability to move on and to change your mind and to change the way you think about things. And I mean, the fact that your relationship with Joe now is as good as it is, and you've shared with us with your other really positive family situation. That to me is it's the huge delight which emerges from these traumatic experiences you've been through, and the man you are now. I'm sure you're the sum total of all of these experiences, but for you to be as calm and as insightful and as positive and as gifted as you are, I just think you're a remarkable human, mate. I really do.
Thank you.
We've got to finish with the podcast because I love your podcast. It's called All or Nothing. YouTube is where I watch it. And you've had some fantastic people on. The first thing is you were a very good podcaster, if you don't mind me saying.
Thank you.
Was this... because I mean, I've not been trained to do this. It's something which I do because I fell in love with podcasts. I mean, how did you decide to do it, and how did you sort of, what skills do you think you had which you could bring to the podcast?
I think it was like real life experience, and the fact that I didn't do any. I felt terrible. I didn't research any guests. I know your name, but I don't know none about you. So. And I didn't turn up with any questions. I don't come up with a list of questions. I'm quite. I think it's scripted when you do that. For me, it was more authentic if I come and say, "Hello, Stacey. Right, tell us a little bit about yourself." So she begins and she's on a roll, and then I can identify. Because it's easy for me to go, "Okay, I felt like that," and how did that make you feel? So the questions started all into one. I felt that was easier than trying to have a list of like generic questions.
Work.
No,
work
not for me. And I wasn't really. I'd done a few podcasts. I'd done like the True Geordie and that kind of. I didn't, to be honest, right. I'd never heard of them, right, and it probably got the biggest views ever, over 2 million something. And I'm glad I'd never heard of them. Someone said, "Why didn't you go on the True Geordie?" I said, "Oh yeah, I remember him sending me a message months ago or whatever." I said, "I better reply." So I replied, and he said, "Come up." I had to go to Camden in London. Still had no idea who he was. Didn't know anything about YouTube. Sat in this big fancy room with all the cameras around. Bang. It was the best interview I felt I had because I didn't know much about them. I didn't realise how big they were. And I thought if I did, I'd have went in full of anxiety. I was so calm about the way I delivered my story. And it done really well. And I've done that on a few podcasts, and then someone said, "Well, why don't you start?" Like, I got fed up. Like I said to you, Sam, I haven't done a podcast interview. I think the last one was James English, and I actually said to her I didn't want to do any. He said, "We'll do a party," and I wasn't really. I said, "Yeah," and I said, "No." And I said, "What the fuck? Who wants to listen to me again? I'm sick and tired of my own voice." And then Stacey called, and
well, we're so grateful to you for coming on.
Didn't I?
Yeah,
you did. You plugged me into it. No, it was I'd been saying to John May, and I thought, you know what? It's Liverpool. Give a little bit back to the community. And there's people in Liverpool who've got podcasts, and there's a What's Happening podcast still, and I always try and encourage him to build this platform because it's so small. How can we build it? You asked me to come on, and hopefully you can get some subscribers and it'll build and people will listen. I'm not here to. I don't want to come on and invent a story and play the victim and woe be me.
Do you know what? That's the great thing about the way you tell your story and about this clarity you've achieved. Is you don't come across like you're playing the victim. You're coming across to me that you're sharing the sum total of your experiences and how they've reached this conclusive position. And what I'd say about it is, I mean, our podcast is all about success through struggle because most people who've been successful have had to go through challenge to get there. The challenges you've had to go through, mate, and to arrive at the situation you have, and you're still a relatively young man. You've got many years of opportunity and happiness ahead of you. And I couldn't be happier for you, Bill. And no matter what happens in your life, it shows that there's always a road back if you can apply that strength and perseverance that you have. And I want to conclude just by saying that we're ever so grateful for you coming on and sharing your story like this and to be as open as you have and as honest as you have. Stacey does cry buckets on a number of podcasts. It's the first time I've seen Jacob Borland though. all I'm going to finish off with saying is that the links to Billy's books are going to be on our socials, as is the link to the podcast. He's a fantastic man. He's got a fantastic tale to tell. I would absolutely recommend all of those things to you. And I really want us all to say thank you very much for Billy Moore to come on our podcast.
Thank you.